The day I went to pick up my new car, I was told my original salesperson had quit. A different guy was handling my file now. The first thing he did was tell me the price I paid was too low. The previous guy was an idiot. No way. We're selling this for 60 grand cash. If you want this car, you'll have to switch to a 5-year loan with 12% interest. I stared at him. I've already paid in full and the contract is signed. This is a breach of contract. The salesman smirked. So what? The car is still on our lot. You aren't driving it away unless you pay up. I let out a dry laugh, reached into my suit pocket and pulled out my phone. Hey Marcus, suspend the loan disbursement for Barnaby Thorne. His dealership seems to be making money hand over fist. I don't think he needs our help anymore. After I hung up, the salesman stayed arrogant. Oh, look at you, calling our boss by his first name. Stop acting like a big shot. Unless you pay the difference. Calling the president himself won't help you. He slammed a pre-prepared loan contract onto the desk. 5-year term, 12% interest. Sign it, and I'll let you drive the car off the lot right now. I scanned a repayment schedule. For $60,000 principal. The interest alone over 5 years would be nearly 35 grand, almost double the original price. 35,000 in interest, this isn't a car loan. This is practically usury. The salesman crossed his arms. Usury? This is a voluntary contract. Go ahead and sue. See who runs out of money first, you or us. Contract is right here. Are you signing or not? Just then, a siren wailed outside. The salesman's expression changed. You actually called the cops? A young officer LED'd the way in. What's going on? Who called for service? The salesman quickly wiped the smug look off his face. Officer Miller, sorry to drag you out here. Just a small misunderstanding. This customer wants the car, but his paperwork is incomplete. Officer Miller raised a hand. Be specific. This gentleman came in to order a car, but he never actually signed a formal contract. Now he's demanding to take it. I stepped in, officer. I paid $60,000 in full. I have a signed contract. A previous salesman quit, and now this man is refusing to honor the deal, trying to force me into a 12% predatory loan. I pushed the new contract toward the officer. The salesman immediately winded. Officer, we're a major dealership. That cash contract he's talking about simply doesn't exist. Officer Miller looked at me. You say you have a contract. Do you have it with you? I do. I pulled the cash purchase agreement from my briefcase. As I handed it over, a flash of mockery crossed the salesman's face. Officer Miller flipped to the signature page and frowned. This only has your signature on it. There's no signature or official seal from the dealership. My heart sank. I snatched the contract back. Sure enough, my name was clear in the buyer's section, but the seller's section was blank. That's impossible. I distinctly remember watching him sign it. The salesman suddenly found his confidence again. See, officer. I told you we never signed. This contract was never finalized. He just trying to pull a fast one on us. Other customers started staring. He looks professional, yet he's doing this. Exactly. He probably thought he could trick the new guy. The salesman threw his hands up. Officer, this is harassment, right? At the very least, he's disrupting our business. Officer Miller looked at me sternly. Mr. Sterling, how do you explain this? You insist they signed, but the document clearly shows otherwise. I stared at the blank space, then caught the salesman's smug grin. A thought flashed through my mind. Did they use disappearing ink? I tapped my finger on the blank space. Fine, let's pretend you didn't sign it. Then, please explain this. Following standard procedure, a contract is signed in duplicate. Both parties sign, and each keeps a copy. If you really didn't sign it, why would you let a customer walk away with a copy? The smile on the salesman's face froze. Officer Miller's eyes sharpened. Answer the question, what? Well, the salesman stuttered. It was probably a clerical error. The process was messy that day. The old salesman was sloppy. I turned to Officer Miller. Officer, I'd like to request the surveillance footage from the signing room, from 1 month ago. No way. The salesman turned pale. That footage contains customer privacy. We can't show it to an outsider. Officer Miller thought for a moment. How about this? I will review the footage with Mr. Sterling. We will only look at the specific events of the signing day. It won't affect your business, and it will clear up the facts. That doesn't violate any rules, does it? Cold sweat beaded on the salesman's forehead. Just then, cheerful voice echoed from the back of the showroom. Officer Miller is absolutely right. Our management has been a bit lax lately. Sorry for the trouble. A middle-aged man with a flushed face walked toward us. I'm the owner of this dealership. I just got back and heard about this little hiccup. Sorry to bother you over such a small thing, officer. Mr. Thorne was all smiles. The The salesman scurried behind his boss. Officer Miller briefly explained our request. Mr. Thorne kept his smile. Officer, at the end of the day, this is just a civil contract dispute between us and Mr. Sterling. I don't think it's reached the level where we need to waste your department's time. He turned to me, his smile never wavering. Mr. Sterling, it's good for young men to have drive, but sometimes things aren't as simple as they seem. It would be a shame to cause an unnecessary scene over a little car purchase, wouldn't it? Officer Miller frowned but didn't speak. Mr. Thorne's eyes crinkled. Young man, a wise person, knows when to back down. I looked at Barnaby Thorne's fake, benevolent face and let out a cold laugh. Knowing when to back down. I'm afraid I'm not as flexible as you are, Mr. Thorne. 3 days ago, this same face looked completely different in my office. Back then, he was practically in tears, telling my manager how his dealership's cash flow had dried up. He begged the bank for a lifeline loan. As the branch president, I had watched his pathetic display from the second-floor balcony. He had bowed so low his head nearly hit the floor. It was only because he seemed so desperate. I had signaled my subordinates to approve his application. He never knew. The person who made the final call was standing right in front of him. Perhaps my expression was too unexpected, because Mr. Thorne's brow furrowed. He quickly put back on his peacemaker mask. Oh, Mr. Sterling, look at this mess. There must have been a breakdown in our internal communication here. 500 from me personally to cover your travel and time. Let's call today a misunderstanding and move on. I scoffed. $500? Do you think I'm a beggar, Mr. Thorne? Officer Miller stepped forward. Mr. Sterling, since the contract evidence is currently not in your favor, maybe you should consider mediation. You can pursue it through the legal system, and I'll file a report on what happened today for his sake. I nodded. Fine. Since the officer suggests it. Seeing me soften, Mr. Thorne's worry vanished. There we go. However, I'll need you to sign a quick waiver. Just a statement saying this matter is settled, and you won't pursue any further claims against us. Mr. Thorne waved off Officer Miller's protest. It's voluntary, officer. If Mr. Sterling has nothing to hide, why wouldn't he sign it? The salesman quickly grabbed a sheet of paper and a pen. I scanned the desk and picked up a regular black pen, the exact type they had used when I signed the contract. I'll use this one. I drafted the waiver and signed it. Here you go. Mr. Thorne tucked the paper into his pocket and pushed the cash toward me. Take it, Mr. Sterling. Have a nice day. Surrounding whispers felt like needles in my back. So after all that, he was just holding out for 500? He acted so tough. I thought he was important. What a joke. I ignored them and turned to Officer Miller. Officer, thank you for your time. Miller nodded and left. As soon as the cruiser pulled away, the salesman dropped his act. What are you still doing here? Is 500 not enough? You dress like a gentleman, but you're just a broke loser. Take the money and get lost. Mr. Thorne had also returned to his arrogant self, sipping tea and not even looking at me. Suddenly the glass doors slammed open. Half a dozen burly men stormed in. Leading them was a bald man with a scar across his face. Barnaby Thorne, where's my money? I gave you 3 days. If I don't get paid today, I'm tearing this place apart. The color drained from Mr. Thorne's face. Jax, what are you doing here? I thought we agreed on a few more days. I've already applied for a $2 million loan from Riverside Bank. I'm just waiting for the president's final signature. Soon as the funds clear, I'll pay you back with interest. Riverside Bank, Jack scoffed. Who are you trying to kid? A guy like you doesn't know anyone at Riverside Corporate. $2 million. Is the bank president your father or something? I'm serious. It's the truth. Mr. Thorne fumbled with his phone. I'll call the manager right now. His loan officer told me yesterday it would be signed today. I'm calling him now. His trembling fingers hit the dial button. At almost the exact same moment, a familiar ringtone echoed through the silent showroom. Coming from my pocket, the silence in the showroom did not just descend, it solidified. It hung between the polished hoods of the luxury sedans, thick as grease and sharp as broken glass. Barnaby Thorne's finger remained frozen half an inch above the glowing screen of his gold-trimmed smartphone. From inside the tailored breast pocket of my charcoal wool jacket, the low, steady vibration of my phone buzzed against my ribs, accompanied by the crisp, unhurried chimes of Riverside Commercial Bank's executive direct dial tone. Jax, whose neck was the width of a beer keg and bore a jagged pale scar running from his earlobe into his collar, stopped tapping his brass knuckles against the hood of an AMG coupe. His gaze flicked from Thorne to me, his brow furrowing into a slab of skeptical stone. What's that? Jax muttered, his voice sounding like gravel grinding beneath an excavator track. I didn't answer right away. I took my time. With slow, deliberate movements, I slipped 2 fingers into my jacket, retrieved the phone, and looked at the caller ID. Marcus Vance, VP of Credit Risk and Asset Origination. Beneath Marcus's name, the small digital display flashed the priority bridge line. Thorne hadn't dialed Marcus directly. He had dialed the branch's main corporate hotline, and Marcus, already acting on my earlier command to freeze Thorne's file, had rerouted all incoming queries regarding the Thorne Motors account directly to my personal handset. I tapped the green icon and slid the call to speakerphone. President Sterling. Marcus's voice rang out through the tiny speaker, clean, clipped, and unmistakably professional. I'm looking at the Thorne Motors file right now. Their $2 million liquidity lifeline. Mr. Thorne just attempted to ping the underwriting desk through the secondary portal, but per your verbal order 2 minutes ago, the authorization has been revoked and flagged for emergency collateral audit. Shall I initiate the freeze on their primary accounts as well? The air seemed to vacate Barnaby Thorne's lungs with a sickening, wet hiss. The color drained from his jowls, leaving his skin the color of skim milk left in the sun. The phone slipped through his damp fingers, bouncing off the polished marble tile with a dull clack. The young salesman, Greg, stood behind the glass counter, his mouth open wide, enough to catch flies. The smug smirk that had been plastered across his face for the last 40 minutes melted into a grotesque mask of raw incomprehension. President Sterling? Thorne whispered, his knees trembling so violently that he had to catch himself on the corner of a promotional brochure stand. You're Sterling? Julian Sterling. You didn't look up at the balcony 3 days ago, did you, Barnaby? I said, softly, stepping forward until I stood just 2 feet from him. You were too busy scraping your nose against the floorboards outside my office, begging my risk committee to save your floor plan credit line before the secondary creditors came to break your legs. I turned the phone slightly toward him. Marcus, keep the bridge open. Have legal prepare an immediate notice of default based on material misrepresentation and unauthorized collateral pledging, and send our recovery squad down here. Address is 440 Industrial Parkway. Understood, Mr. Sterling. They're 10 minutes out. I hung up, slipped the phone back into my pocket, and met Thorne's hollow eyes. You told me a wise man knows when to back down, I remarked, brushing an invisible speck of dust from my cuff. Tell me, Barnaby, does this look like backing down to you? Jax let out a short, barking laugh that rattled the plate glass. He stepped around the hood of the AMG, his crew fanning out behind him, blocking every exit from the showroom floor. Well, Barnaby, Jax growled, crossing his tattooed arms over his chest. Looks like your miracle banker isn't your father after all. In fact, looks like the banker is the guy you just tried to rob for 60 grand. Jax, wait, listen to me, this is a misunderstanding. Thorne shrieked, his voice climbing into an octave reserved for cornered vermin. He turned back to me, his hands raised in a frantic gesture of supplication. Mr. Sterling. Julian, please. I didn't know it was you. If I had known, if Greg had told me. Don't blame Greg, I said mildly. Greg was only executing the policy you designed. The vanishing ink trick is quite clever. A bit crude for corporate finance, but entirely effective on retail customers who don't have the stomach or the bankroll to retain a litigation team for 18 months. Greg's head snapped up. What are you talking about? Vanishing ink? Officer Miller saw it. The seller section was blank. Officer Miller saw an apparently blank sheet of paper. I corrected him, pulling the carbon copy contract and the freshly signed waiver out from my inner pocket. Because you used a standard Pilot Friedasian thermosensitive gel pen. The ink vanishes completely when subjected to friction heat above 60 degrees Celsius, or in your case, when your clerk ran the duplicate under a simple flat iron behind the partition before handing me my copy. I looked at the waiver in my hand, the one Thorne had made me sign with the pen, from his own desk to release them from liability in exchange for $500 in cash. You gave me the exact same pen to sign this release, I said, holding up the paper. I picked up the hot cup of black tea Thorne had been sipping from the side table, took the ceramic mug and pressed its steaming, near-boiling base directly against the center of the waiver I had signed just 5 minutes earlier. Right before their eyes, the dark black ink of my signature began to blur, fade, and completely evaporate, leaving the signature line as blank and pristine as Virgin snow. You see? I said, setting the tea down. A waiver signed in disappearing ink. Isn't worth the paper it vanished from. But more importantly, I walked over to the mini fridge behind the reception desk, the one stocked with sparkling water for high-end clientele. I opened the small freezer compartment. At the top, pulled out an ice pack, and laid my original cash purchase agreement, the one that had mysteriously lost the dealership's signature, flat against the frosted blue plastic. Within 10 seconds, the cold began to reverse the chemical reaction of the Luco.
Die.
Faint gray lines emerged from the white fibers. Then dark purple. Then solid, indelible black. There, stamped clearly in the seller's signature box, was the corporate seal of Thorne Motors and the distinct, flamboyant signature of the previous sales manager, dated 3 weeks ago, confirming receipt of $60,000 in cash for a 2026 Continental GT. Jax let out a low whistle.
Damn.
That's cold. Literally. Greg collapsed back into his swivel chair, his face gray. Thorne looked as though he were about to vomit. You knew, Thorne croaked. You knew the whole time. I run a $12 billion commercial lending division, Barnaby. I replied, leaning over the counter and staring directly into his dilated pupils.
You.
Think you're the first petty swindler who thought he could outsmart basic contract law with a $4 pen from an office supply store? Before Thorne could utter another word of pleading, the double glass doors of the showroom burst open again. This time, it wasn't the police. It was a fleet of 3 black Cadillac Escalades bearing the subtle silver insignia of Riverside Corporate Security and Asset Management. 7 men in dark suits stepped out, led by Marcus Vance. Behind them came 2 certified forensic accountants holding ruggedized laptops, followed by 3 uniformed off-duty state marshals carrying clipboards and asset seizure warrants. Marcus marched straight past Jax's men without breaking stride, his wingtips clicking rhythmically against the stone. President Sterling, Marcus said, nodding crisply. The injunction has been granted by Judge Vance at the Municipal District Court due to material default, suspected fraudulent asset conversion, and immediate flight risk, Riverside Commercial Bank has exercised its cross-default acceleration clause. We are taking physical custody of all floor plan collateral immediately. You can't do that, Thorne screamed, rushing toward Marcus. This is private property. The cars belong to the dealership. One of the state marshals stepped forward, placing a heavy, gloved hand flat against Thorne's chest, pushing him back down into an armchair with effortless authority. Mr. Thorne, the marshal stated in a monotone voice. Under the terms of your master credit facility, Riverside Bank holds a senior perfected UCC, 1 blanket lien on every VIN, chassis, component, and bank balance registered to this business entity until the $48 million primary balance and the $2 million operating overdraft are cured in cash. These premises are under bank receivership. The lead forensic accountant plugged a high-speed dongle into the dealership's central terminal behind Greg's desk. Within seconds, the main wall display, which usually showed slick promotional videos of roaring engines, flickered and switched to a real-time asset ledger. Row after row of VIN numbers flashed up in crimson red. Mr. Sterling, the accountant called out, typing rapidly. It's worse than we thought. Thorne Motors hasn't just been running disappearing ink tricks on retail buyers. They've double-pledged the entire inventory. Every single vehicle on this lot has been collateralized twice, once with Riverside and once through an offshore secondary lender registered in the Cayman Islands. Jax stepped forward, his eyes narrowing into slits. The Cayman lender? You mean Apex Capital? The accountant glanced up.
Yes.
Apex Holdings LLC. Jax turned his head toward Barnaby Thorne. The violent rage in the enforcer's face was terrifyingly quiet. Apex belongs to my boss, Barnaby, Jax whispered. You told us those titles were clean. You told us Riverside had waived their priority interest. Thorne was shaking so hard his teeth clicked together like castanets. Jax, I was going to pay you. As soon as the $2 million cleared from Riverside, I was going to wire the full balance to Apex. I swear to God. With what money, Barnaby? I interjected, stepping between them. You were going to use Riverside's bailout to pay off Jax's loan sharks, and then you were going to use predatory 12% consumer paper from poor retail walk-ins to cover the interest on our default. You were running a 3-tier Ponzi scheme on 4 wheels. Greg, realizing the ship was not just sinking, but being pulverized by depth charges, suddenly bolted from his chair. He didn't make it 3 steps. One of Jax's muscle-bound enforcers caught him by the scruff of his synthetic suit jacket, lifted him 6 inches off the floor, and slammed him down across the glass coffee table, shattering the decorative crystal bowl in the center. "Stay put, kid," the enforcer grunted. "It wasn't me," Greg wailed, tears streaming down his cheeks, smearing cheap hair gel across his forehead. "It was Mr. Thorne. He told me to do it," he said. "If we forced 30 customers this month into the 12% high-interest paper, we'd make enough commission to pay off the front-end interest. He has a safe in the back office. The real titles are in the safe. The ones we hid from the bank auditors." "Shut up, you idiot," Thorne roared, lunging forward, only to be shoved back down by the marshal. "A safe, you say?" I said, looking at Greg. "Yes. In the floor behind the trophy cabinet," Greg blurted out, desperate to save his own skin. "The combination is 44-12-88. There's 400,000 in unrecorded cash, 60 clean car titles, and the master logbook of all the buyers we used the heat-sensitive ink on." Marcus tapped the marshal on the shoulder. "Marshal, if you would." 2 marshals and a corporate security officer walked toward the back office. Within 90 seconds, the muffled sound of a heavy steel door popping open echoed through the hallway. They returned carrying a heavy metal lockbox and a thick, blue ledger. Marcus flipped open the ledger and skimmed the pages, his expression hardening. "Julian," Marcus said, his voice cold. "Over 200 victims. Mostly single parents, working-class laborers, and veterans using cash savings. They took their cash, ran the contracts through the heat plate, told them the deal fell through, and forced them into secondary subprime lending at rates up to 18%. If they refused, Thorne's guys threatened them with repossession and legal ruin." The air in the room grew suffocatingly dense. Even Jax, a man who made his living breaking bones in back alleys, looked at the ledger with open disgust. "Scamming working stiffs out of their life savings with magic pens," Jax spat on the polished floor near Thorne's feet. "And here I thought I was in the dirty business." The sirens wailed in the distance before anyone could make another move. 2 squad cars pulled up onto the showroom apron, their red and blue strobe lights painting the glass walls in frantic pulses. Officer Miller stepped out, accompanied this time by a senior detective wearing a brown trench coat and a gold shield on his belt. Miller had clearly run my name through the precinct database after leaving the lot 20 minutes ago. The moment he walked through the door, his eyes locked onto me, his face pale and stiff with professional embarrassment. "Mr. Sterling," Miller said, taking off his cap. "I received a priority notification from the District Attorney's Special Financial Crimes Unit. Detective Harris and I are here to execute an evidentiary hold." Detective Harris stepped forward, flashing his badge toward Thorne. "Barnaby Thorne, Gregory Vance. You are under arrest for grand larceny, systematic scheme to defraud, falsification of business records, and felony extortion." Thorne looked up, his eyes bloodshot, his composure completely disintegrated. "Officer, look at these men. They're trespassing. Jax is an illegal debt collector. Sterling is using bank goons to intimidate me." Harris didn't even look at the paperwork Thorne was waving. He looked at the marshals, nodded to Marcus, and then turned back to Thorne. "Mr. Thorne, Riverside Bank submitted an expedited evidentiary brief 20 minutes ago, complete with bank drafts, duplicate thermal signatures, and 4 sworn affidavits from previous victims. We also have your loan officer from Riverside singing like a canary in the precinct interrogation room. Turn around and put your hands behind your back." Greg was already on his knees, weeping openly as the cold steel handcuffs clicked around his wrists. When Miller approached Thorne, the older man tried to pull away, his face turning an apoplectic shade of purple. "You can't do this to me. I built this company. I know the mayor. I know the state senators. You'll lose your badges for this." "Save it for the magistrate, Barnaby," Detective Harris said coldly, twisting Thorne's arms behind him and snapping the cuffs shut with a sharp, definitive ratchet. As the police led Thorne and Greg out toward the cruisers, the showroom emptied of its oppressive tension, leaving only the corporate audit team, the marshals, and Jax's crew. Jax stood in the middle of the floor, staring at the rows of high-end vehicles that were now officially under federal bank receivership. He turned to me, scratching his stubbled jaw. "So," Jax said, his voice flat, "Riverside holds senior priority on all these assets, which means Apex Capital and my boss are out $2 million. I looked at Jax calmly. Your boss lent money against unverified, double-pledged collateral without running a basic lien search on the state registry. In the eyes of the law, Apex is an unsecured secondary creditor. In a standard liquidation, you get less than 5 cents on the dollar after 3 years of bankruptcy litigation. Jax took a step closer, his massive frame casting a shadow over me. 5 cents on the dollar doesn't keep my boss happy, Mr. Sterling. And when my boss isn't happy, people get hurt. I didn't flinch. I didn't step back. Marcus, I said, without taking my eyes off Jax. What is the estimated fair market liquidation value of Thorne's non-vehicle assets? The real estate parcel on Industrial Parkway, the service bays, and the parts warehouse. Marcus tapped his tablet. Appraised at roughly $5.4 million, Julian. Riverside senior claim on the floor plan inventory covers our primary exposure. The physical real estate is surplus. I looked back at Jax. Riverside is taking control of the vehicles to make the retail victims whole and clear our balance sheet. The real estate goes to auction next month. If Apex files a formal claim through our designated receivership portal rather than using brass knuckles in a showroom, I will personally certify Apex's secondary lien status against the land proceeds. You'll recover 90 cents on the dollar within 60 days. Legally. Cleanly. Without a single detective looking at your tax returns. Jax stared at me for 5 long seconds. The gears in his head turned, weighing the certainty of a clean $1.8 million payout against the suicidal prospect of starting a war with the largest commercial bank in the state and the state police. A slow, rough grin split Jax's scarred face. You're a ruthless son of a bitch, Sterling, Jax said, sticking out a massive, calloused hand. I'm a banker, Jax, I replied, shaking his hand firmly. We just know how to count better than you do. Jax nodded to his men. We're out. Clear the floor. Within 2 minutes, Jax's crew had vanished into the afternoon light there. Heavy SUVs rumbling away down Industrial Parkway. The showroom was finally quiet. The only sounds remaining were the soft clicks of the forensic team's keyboards, and the rhythmic whir of the portable label printers tagging the files for the district attorney. Marcus walked up to me, holding a sleek, silver and carbon fiber key fob. The 2026 Continental GT, Marcus said, handing me the key. The paperwork in the safe was fully executed. The registration is clean, the title is pristine in your name, and the cash payment of $60,000 was logged into Thorne's personal ledger before he tried to wipe the contract. I took the key. It felt cool, solid, and heavy in my palm. What about the other 200 victims in that ledger? I asked. Legal is already drafting the restitution motion, Marcus answered with a slight smile. We're using Thorne's seized cash reserves to void every single fraudulent 12% loan. Those who paid cash get their clean titles immediately. Those who were forced into predatory financing are having their loans restructured at 0% interest, subsidized entirely from Thorne's personal liquid assets. Good, I said. Make sure Officer Miller gets the credit for cooperating on the evidence chain. He did his job, even when the deck was stacked. Consider it done. I walked across the showroom floor toward the far corner, where a midnight blue Grand Tourer sat beneath the spotlights. Its lines were low, predatory, and immaculate. I unlocked the driver's side door. The interior smelled of hand-stitched Connolly leather, polished walnut, and brand new machinery. I slipped into the driver's seat, adjusted the rearview mirror, and pressed the engine start button. The twin-turbo engine roared to life with a deep, authoritative purr that resonated through the glass walls of the showroom. It wasn't the sound of an aggressive street racer. It was the sound of quiet, unyielding, undeniable power. I rolled down the window as Marcus walked over to open the main bay doors. Going back to the office, Julian? Marcus asked. Not today, Marcus, I said, putting the car into gear. It's a nice afternoon. I think I'll take the long way home. I tapped the throttle, and the car glided smoothly out into the sunlight, leaving the broken glass, the shattered egos, and the vanishing tricks far behind in the rearview mirror.